Sometimes you're just walking out the door and you just say, hey, that fool looks like me.
Season 0!
Actually, no, that Mitch Davis came up to me from Fantasia, and it's just like, dude, you have a freaking doppelganger here. And I'm just like...
he mentioned to me, he's like,
Yeah.
yes, me, I know, like, looks just like you.
Yeah, and then I'm just like, and then I just couldn't stay for your movie yesterday, but I did watch the opening, and I'm just like, I gotta see who this guy is, and I'm just like, damn, that guy's handsome. All right, I'm down with this. I'll be a Bobsy Twins. All right, this is all right. All right, so what's the name of your movie, man?
Excess Flesh.
All right, and this was a Canadian premiere.
Yes, Canadian premiere. We had our world premiere at South by Southwest in the midnight section, and have been sort of moving through the genre circuit, and are going to continue through the fall.
All right, so I have no idea what your movie's about. Tell me and the audience what it's about.
It's kind of a twisted psychodrama, or what do they call it? Psycho horror, in that sort of vein of things. It's two young women who live in Los Angeles. One who idealizes the other, who's very thin, and she's just a normal girl, and they're roommates. And their sort of animosity towards each other, which is also a codependency, sort of spirals out of control. You know, it sort of goes from
sounds sexy.
Too much, then it starts.
It's spoiling. It's spoiling it. All right.
This one's all built around that sort of like the discovery of what's going on. So that's why it's hard to.
And old school wise, in a video store, if you're in a video store and you saw like, a bunch of VHSs, and sometimes they'll put Dazed and Confused next to the Stone Age and Suburbia. Yeah. If your VHS was on this shelf, VHS is an old video format, children, that we used to watch before DVDs existed.
You actually had to go
a
to the
DVD
store.
is before a Blu-ray, and
you had to wait months. You had to wait years to find movies. It was impossible to find some stuff. You had to go to festivals. Actually, and they'd have tables set up where there would be like bootlegs. Of like those crazy like Takashi Miike. I remember discovering him via bootlegs, like Japanese bootlegs, VHS bootlegs. So and this was not even that long ago. This was like 2000.
2000,
15 years ago.
Yeah, well, all the stupid kids in your music.
Yeah.
Anyway, so if you were to look at yourself in, like, let's say Movie Land or something like that, and your VHS is on the shelf, what would be next to it?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it would probably be sort of like, I don't know if anybody's familiar with that movie Safe, with Julianne Moore. It was directed by Todd Haynes, which is this woman who becomes sort of allergic, to her environment. I think it would probably be in between that and anything that Zulawski has done, like Possession or any of his films. Both of those are kind of like big seminal sort of influences for me. Both those filmmakers and those particular like Possession and also Polanski. I'd say Repulsion. Repulsion would be a good one. It would be like Repulsion, then our movie, then Safe, and then somewhere like the whole filmography of Zulawski. But Blockbuster wouldn't organize it like that. You'd have to go to some.
I don't think Blockbuster would hold your movie. They'd probably put a lampshade in front of everything.
They would. But Blockbuster never had like a cult section or anything like that. You kind of had to like, be surprised by whatever you were grabbing, based on the cover of it.
So where are you from?
I'm originally from the Midwest in the U.S. And have been living in Los Angeles for the last 13 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And who was your big hero as a kid? Where let's not give credit to the filmmakers, because you've obviously named a bunch of filmmakers who I admire, but let's actually do something unique. And like, who was the person, your gatekeeper, to show you this entire world of horror? Because back in the day, because we're not 15 years old, someone had to show you, and it wasn't just like there wasn't any Google to tell you.
Right. Well, it was luckily I was in Chicago, which was a sort of a place where I could go. Like they had like Facets, Cinematheque, and a lot of sort of independent video stores. And I remember there was one sort of independent video store that had a whole sort of like cult section. They actually had that section, and I went through and I watched every single thing in there, like Tetsuo the Iron Man. I used to love those movies, and so that was kind of how I started to discover stuff. And then just spending you know, like not having a social life beyond movies, you know. But it covered the wide breadth of things. You know, I don't really like. I'm not just into the horror sort of thing. Actually, when we were making this movie, I didn't think it really was a horror movie. I thought it was more like kind of like I said, a psychodrama. And it's kind of been put in that category, mostly because just the style of it and, you know, the craziness of it. You know, kind of the response from genre audiences is a lot. You know, they're more willing to go into these strange places than, you know, I guess normal audiences or whatever.
Speaking of genre audiences, let's. I was there for the beginning of your right before your movie premiered. I had to go. What happened afterwards? Like, let's describe that moment when you hear that Fantasia audience and you go down there and the spotlight's in your eyes. What was it like experiencing the craziness of Canada?
Well, I felt like the response to this movie was kind of like the most active and it was getting it was hitting, the beats were hitting with the audience the strongest, you know, here. And that was a great thing to like hear and see. But also the other thing is we've been playing all midnight screenings, so it's like 2:30 a.m. and we've just made a movie that has destroyed you, and people don't want to stay around. So mostly I walk up there and I see streams of people just going out like into the night, you know. Whereas if we were playing at like 7 o'clock, you know, it would be like they would point their finger at me and be like, you have ruined my night, you know. So they don't really have the opportunity, they're too tired, you know. So
have they said that to you? You have ruined my night?
Oh yeah on many occasions. And or ruin their appetite, because when we play at South by Southwest, they're at the Alamo Draft House theaters, which serve all sorts of crap, you know, food on banquettes, you know, in front of you. And this movie is basically like, in a way, a kind of if it were in the horror genre, you know, people have been calling it like body horror, but I actually would call it food horror, you know. So
you know, that's going to be the tagline of my video, food horror.
Yeah. You know, there's what do they call it, like what's the Eli Roth sort of torture porn, and this is like food porn, you know. This food torture porn. There we go. That's a new genre. That's what we're creating right here. So FTP, right? Perfect. So yeah.
All right. Well, you've just witnessed the birth of FTP. I think we'll end on that. Batman or Superman?
Batman by a long shot.
All right.
And I really hope he destroys Superman in this new one coming up. You know, actually, I think that like I was like. When Ben Affleck was first cast as Batman, I was like, this is perfect. You know, like I actually think that Ben Affleck is going to be the perfect like Bruce Wayne / Batman.
I saw a Comic-Con thing where when Zack Snyder was coming up to Ben, he's like, I don't know, are you sure I'm the right guy to do this? He's like, yeah, you don't get it. My take on Batman, he's like, he's broken and he's messed up, and he's just like, and you thought of me.
Right. Yeah. Well, it was kind of like it was like his casting in Gone Girl was sort of like perfect, because he's so good at playing that like asshole, like rich, you know, good looking kind of guy.
Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, Bruce Wayne, basically. So, you know, I'm super excited for that one. And also, of course, you know, how this all intersects with the like Suicide Squad movies and, you know, all that stuff. So basically the whole DC world, like Marvel world, doesn't really do it for me. All
right. So, and if you could, considering you're such an abstract type of man, and you with your FTP, with your FTP, if you could direct any comic book movie in the world, we're talking Dark Horse, we're talking Image, anything, not even of the big two, what would it be?
Well, there actually is a property that's a kind of obscure one by Jamie Delano that I'm really hoping to do at some. I don't want to name it because then people are gonna go find it. And I'm trying to buy all the copies of it before they do. So eventually, hopefully, at some point in time, I get to do that. It's a graphic novel, and it's been the thing that's like affected me the most. You know, I was a huge fan of like alternative comics sort of growing up, less the mainstream sort of like superhero sort of stuff, but anything that like, you know, Vertigo or DC Vertigo would put out, and like all of those writers, you know, like Daniel Clowes, and you know that sort of world of things, you know, because I was like those characters. You know, so yeah, you know, more of the adult stuff. I was always, when I was a kid, I was like, I want the adult things, you know, I don't want the kid things, you know. So
I I want some FTP.
Yeah.
All right.
Actually, I would really love to actually to do a Spawn movie.
Oh, yeah.
I want to read it, like do it for real. Even though I actually kind of like the Spawn movie's kind of the guilty pleasure of mine, you know, the original one. But I'm surprised they haven't rebooted that one yet.
Some people sniff glue.
Right. I mean, I hope that nobody does do that. So maybe at some point in time I'll get to sort of maybe take a crack at that. You know, that's you know, the whole Todd McFarlane sort of world of things is kind of like going away, right? Nobody.
What's your Violator doing some FTP?
Yeah. Okay. Well, you know.
That's the theme of that's
FTP.
Totally, FTP. All right. Well, thanks very much for talking with me.
Of course.
Appreciate it a lot.
Thank you.
All right, let's go solve some mysteries.
Yes.
Thanks for watching Season 0.
Season